Hey y'all, it's Affliliate Bookishrealm and I'm back with another video. As you can see from the title of this video, these are 8 more books that I will never read. And I title it as 8 more books I will never read because I actually did a video that was similar to this last year, probably about a year ago, where I talked about 10 popular books I would never read. And since it's 2022, brand new year, new me, new trash talking session, I thought I would give you 8 more titles. So I always have to like preface these videos and say, if you like it, it's for you. I'm not hating on you. These books are just not for me. This has nothing to do with you. I'm not judging you if you love these books. Good for you if you love them, just not my cup of tea. They were not made for me, and so I will not ever be reading them. And so don't take any personal offense to any book that may appear on this. Some of these books, literally, I just have no interest in reading whatsoever. Some of these I just won't read on principle alone because I'm just not going to do it. So we're going to get started. And my first goal and aim was to piss off all of my dark academia. That's what it was. All of the dark academia girlies are going to hate me for the first 2 because I have absolutely no interest in reading either one of these. And I'm sorry because they've gotten such a lot of buzz. I could care less. I don't want to read them. The first one, Ninth House. Everyone has absolutely ranted and raved about Ninth House. I am interested in reading Leigh Bardugo's Shadow and Bone stuff, but I have no interest in reading Ninth House because the premise itself just didn't really appeal to me, and I don't think I'm a dark academia type of person. I know that it's supposed to be really cool because I believe the university that's included or covered in the book is Yale, and there's a lot of like secret society stuff. I just don't care. And I know there are people who love it. There are people who I love that love it, and I still love them. It just is not a book that was made for me. And I know that the second book is coming out and people have been dying for Leigh Bardugo to write the second book. I just don't care whether it comes, it doesn't come. It's just, it hasn't really piqued my interest. So that is one of the books by Leigh Bardugo that I just, if I ever get through the rest of her backlist, I just won't be picking up that series because I'm not remotely interested in reading it at all. The second one that I have on this list is another dark academia book, and that is Deadly Education, which there were some interesting conversations about Deadly Education when it came out, about some of the representation in the book. I have not read it. I don't have a copy of it. I think I had like a Libro FM audio copy of Deadly Education. And while I've been interested in other works by Naomi Novik, I just, one, already did not naturally gravitate to this one. It just wasn't anything that appealed to me. But that whole situation with like the discussion about the locks being associated with filth, your girl is locked. So I know that that situation got rectified, but like whenever you get a bad taste of something, it's just kind of hard for you to like undo that bad taste. Like it kind of sits and stays with you for forever. So that's kind of that thing with me as well. It's just kind of like sitting with me, and I just, even if future editions it's corrected, I just, not to say that I won't read anything that Naomi Novik writes, but I think that series for me is just not meant for me. And I know a lot of people who really enjoy it and enjoy the writing and the storytelling and everything that happens. But once again, just not a story that was meant for me. I think I just may not be, like I said, I just may not be like a dark academia type of girl, and that's okay. It just may not be my jam, because anything that's traditionally categorized as dark academia, like I have not really gravitated towards it. So I'm just kind of coming to grips in terms with the fact that it just may not be for me. The next one that I have on this list is Lore. And honestly, I don't really have any interest in picking up anything by Bracken. I know that they have I forget what the name of the series that they had originally wrote before that everybody enjoyed, and I can see the covers. You can see the cover because I'm probably going to feel inclined to put it on the screen because I can't remember the name. Is it The Darkest Minds? I'm hoping I am right. I just don't have any interest in anything that Alexandra Bracken has written. It's just not I don't know. I thought the cover of Lore looked really pretty, and here's the catch. I actually started listening to Lore in audiobook and thought it was incredibly boring. And so with that being said, I probably got in between 5 to 10% into this one, and I was so intrigued because of the premise of this story, and I was like, oh, this like sounds like something I might actually enjoy. I knew it was a longer book, but I was like, the cover, the story sounds good. And then I started listening and I'm like, yo, this is dry and boring. I'm not interested. I don't care. So I'll never read that book. I don't know if I will ever read any of their books, to be honest with you. It's just like I haven't found anything that they've written that I have found particularly appealing, or anything that's caught my eye. And it's nothing against them, no like author behavior. It's just like sometimes you could really appreciate an author but just not dig their works. As a matter of fact, a good example of that for me is Sabaa Tahir, who I talked about in the last video. I appreciate Sabaa Tahir as a human. I think that she is wonderful, but we just don't get along in terms of like the books that she writes, and that's okay. And I think that's like the situation here, where, you know, no author issue or anything like that. I just don't feel like their books are particularly for me. The next one that I have on my list is anything by Colleen Hoover. So any Colleen Hoover book that you want to insert up here. I don't even know what book I'm going to choose to put on the cover, but I will never pick up a Colleen Hoover book. I don't have any interest in Colleen Hoover. Book Talk loves Colleen Hoover. The library loves Colleen Hoover. Some of BookTube loves Colleen Hoover. And I just don't care. I have seen too many reviews of people who I love and I trust, where they're like, you know, Colleen Hoover is just not it. And it's not even about the toxic relationship thing, because listen, I've read the entire After series. I've read Zodiac Academy, and while I haven't rated them high, the entertainment value has been skyrocket. Like, it's been out of this world. I've enjoyed the entertainment value, but Colleen Hoover, just none of the stories that she writes hold any appeal. And I know that there has been some author behavior stuff going on in there. I don't remember the exact details. I believe that Izzy from Happy for Now has talked about it, and if I find the video or if I find anything that Izzy has done, I feel like and Izzy, if I'm wrong, let me know, but I feel like Izzy has talked about some author behavior things with Colleen Hoover. There's too many romance books, I think, that I want to read, where Colleen Hoover is not high on my priority list. She's actually not on my priority list at all. She's not really on my radar. I have no really like strong feelings about wanting to pick up stuff. And it's really interesting because even like on the back end of my job, when it comes to like collection development, we're starting to see like an uptick of people like requesting Colleen Hoover, checking her stuff out. And I think a lot of that has to do with social media, and I still have like no interest. Like, I don't care. And so I'm sorry if you absolutely adore Colleen Hoover. She's not for me. Her books are not for me. And I know that she has this huge backlist and she puts out so many books a year, but I can live my life without Colleen Hoover. I don't know if you can, but I know that I can. The next one that I have on this list is gonna piss so many of y'all off, but I will never, ever, ever read The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I know there's drama right now going on. Well, I don't even want to say drama, because maybe drama is not the right word. I know there's a lot of conversation going on right now because somebody has read, I was about to say Colleen Hoover. Somebody read Holly Black's new book, thought it was not good, and returned the book and got their money back. And some people feel some type of way about that. I'm like, listen, books are too expensive. Like, if I don't like it, I'm gonna return it. I'm sure the conversation is more nuanced than that, but you know, I kind of get sentiments on both sides. It has nothing to do with that situation. I don't think I've actually ever read a Holly Black book, and I've never really felt strongly about it. I actually got a arc of The Cruel Prince, which I know is like super coveted, and I feel guilty because like I just never read it, and I'm looking at it right now, and I just have, it will go to somebody who really, really, really does want that arc, but I just have no interest in reading The Cruel Prince. I don't care. I am not interested in the synopsis of it. I know that people love the first and second book and have strong feelings. I think the third book is extremely divisive, but I can look at all the books just even like on my shelf that I need to read, and The Cruel Prince is not one where I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to read this book. So with that being said, I'm so sorry, because I know a lot of y'all are going to have some hurt feelings about that. I really feel like I just had someone bring up The Cruel Prince in one of my comments on a previous video. I can't remember what video it was, but I know that that's a fan favorite. It's just not, it wasn't made for me, and that's okay. The next one is probably going to be another one that people are not going to like. I will never read Tokyo Dreaming. I read the first book in the series, and it just was not as mind-blowing as people made it out to be. It was very just lackluster. I listened to the first book as a arc from Libro FM, and I actually was one that I finished before release date, and I just couldn't understand like why people were so blown away by it, because to me it wasn't that it was a bad story, but it wasn't exceptional either. It was more like your standard YA contemporary, and I just didn't feel like there were any specific components of that book that made it more appealing than any other YA contemporary book that I had read. It wasn't anything that like stood out that made me feel like, oh my gosh, this is a book that I must recommend to everybody. I'm gonna reread this book. I need a physical copy of this book. It just didn't do anything. So when I found out that Tokyo Dreaming was coming out, I was like, I don't care. The first book was lackluster. I know that in the library, like, it's been a huge thing. I believe Reese Witherspoon also picked it as one of her YA book club picks. So in that terms, like, I've seen it get a lot of circulation in the library. But for me, it was just like, I don't get the appeal. But if you like it, I can respect that you like it, but it just was not one that I thought was, in my personal opinion, worthy of all the hype. And so with the second book releasing, it hasn't even released yet, and I feel bad because I'm like, oh, I'll never read this book, and this book doesn't even come out to the 31st of this month, and I'm already talking about the fact that you'll never catch me reading this book. But you really won't ever catch me reading this book, especially if I didn't think that the first book in the series was strong enough for me to want to continue. There was nothing that really like pulled my attention that made me really gravitate towards the story. So, I hope you all enjoy the sequel when it does release, but I won't be reading it. One is A Spanish Love Deception. I thought this was boring. This was another one. It had gotten like a world of hype. Everybody was reading The Spanish Love Deception, and I was like, I'm gonna pick it up. I got it on audio on Libby. I listened to probably about, once again, probably 5 to 10% of it. And I was like, yeah, this is not gonna work. Like, I'm bored. And I think for me, what's happening now is I don't read as much, I guess, I don't want to say mainstream, traditionally published. That's what I was looking for. I don't read as much traditionally published romance as I used to. I lean heavily now in the indie world because of the flexibility. And I don't know, and I could be so wrong for saying this, but I feel like I just enjoy the stories more. I feel like the writing is stronger, which is probably weird to say that it is independently published and we have these expectations of traditionally published books, but I just don't. It's very formulaic. When I think about traditionally published romance, everything is done in such a formula to the point that it's like I can go into a story and I know exactly what's going to happen. So it's so unfortunate that I feel that way, but at the same time, I know what type of romance I'm going to lean towards now and where I need to be looking from, where I need to be looking in terms of acquiring my romance from. And I mean, even with the traditionally published romance that I've read this year, like, I haven't really loved going through and I'm thinking, like, what I've read. I haven't really loved any of the traditional romance that I've read this year, and it's, if I could sit here and like nothing stands out, then that says something. But there has been some indie romance that I've read this year that's been like top tier, 5-star, can't get it out of my head. And so I'm actually not surprised that when I started reading The Spanish Love Deception, I was like, no, this is dry. Like, I could have given it more time, but once again, I think as I get older, I realize I literally cannot read every book that I want to read. It's never going to happen. So I need to get to those books that are most important. And so The Spanish Love Deception just wasn't up there on the list for me. But if you enjoyed it, you know, there are some people out there who swear by The Spanish Love Deception, and I'm just not one of them. And the last thing on this list, which should, like, this is the one thing that I won't budge on, and I don't think you can kind of like justify or really have a conversation with me about this. I will never read any book that is a Nazi romance. Romancelandia has had a wave of Nazi romances still getting published in the year of our Lord 2022, and I am so confused as to why we are still getting Nazi romances. I think the last one that I had heard about maybe happened around like March, April-ish, or maybe it was February, March. I feel like March is kind of like that middle area where it did happen, where someone it was a whole entire, I can't remember the title of the book, but I will find the cover and I'll put it on the screen for you, where there was a bidding war for a book about a German prisoner of war, a Nazi, that was living in the Midwest on a farm, and had the audacity to compare it to Kristen Hanna's books. And I'm like, but no, I'm so confused as to why we think that having redeeming arcs for people in history who have done wrong is an appropriate thing to do, because it negates all of the pain and trauma that they inflicted. Like, you're trying to redeem them, and they're not redeemable. There's just certain things that are just not redeemable. And so when we have this thing about like people falling in love with Nazis, I'm like, but why do we, out of everything that you can touch in terms of romance, with tropes, with settings, with characters, you have to choose a Nazi? And of course it hits home for a lot of people who are still impacted by these wannabe Nazis that live on US soil still. So no, you will never catch me picking, I don't care how damn romantic you think it is, how redeeming it is, how much you try to say, well, it's not exactly a Nazi romance. It is a Nazi romance. You will never catch it in my hands. I think that's deplorable. It's despicable. It does not take into consideration anybody that has been harmed by Nazis and is currently being harmed by Nazis. So this is when I'm like, I can't understand why you would want to read stuff like that. Like, we just gonna have to agree to disagree on this one, because there's no justification in my eyes to advocate for the publication of a Nazi romance and recommending Nazi romances, because I've seen people in this community do it. Why are you recommending Nazi romances? I'm confused. I'm so confused. It should not be a thing. Anyway, y'all, so those are 8 more books that you will never see me read. If you want to read them, read them. Y'all know how I am. Like, read what you would like to read. My biggest hiccup and hang up is definitely going to be the Nazi romance thing. Like, I can't get past that. Anything else in the list, like, you know, even though good old Colleen Hoover, that's your cup of tea, that's your cup of tea. But those are books that I won't particularly ever pick up. As always, in the comments below, let me know what books you're no longer interested in reading or you think you will never read. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss a video. If you're looking for ways to support my channel, there are links down in the description box below, and I will be back with another video soon.